Welcome back to the deep dive. We're looking at a landscape today where the boundary between a physical military strike and a digital intrusion has essentially just vanished.
Yeah, it really has.
And we're seeing this fusion happen at an unprecedented speed, specifically regarding the sudden escalation of Iranian state-aligned cyber threats directed against U.S., Israeli, and other international targets. And this all really kicked off in early 2026.
Right. And I think the velocity of this shift is what really stands out here. I mean, we are moving away from traditional cyber espionage.
Where they just kind of sit quietly on a network for years, gathering intel.
Exactly. That era is fading. Now we're entering a phase where cyber operations are deployed as immediate tactical responses to kinetic warfare. The private networks that power our everyday lives are, well, they're increasingly becoming the staging grounds for these massive geopolitical maneuvers.
Which brings us to our source code for today's mission. We are looking at a massive, highly detailed threat intelligence report. It was published just today, March 5, 2026, by the threat hunter team at Symantec and Carbon Black, which is under Broadcom.
It is an incredibly dense report.
It really is. And we are going to break down the specific tactics, the threat actor ecosystem, and the digital fallout of this conflict for you. But before we get into it, we need to state something very clearly.
Yeah, this is important.
Because this report deals with highly sensitive, ongoing, real-world events involving the United States, Israel, Iran, and the Palestinian territories. We want to be completely transparent with you up front. Our only mission today is to look at the data.
Strictly the data.
Exactly. We are remaining entirely impartial, and we are taking absolutely no political sides whatsoever. We are just unpacking the cyber intelligence, the malicious code, and the network activity exactly as it's presented in this newly released report.
Right. We are stripping away the political commentary to focus purely on the mechanics. By analyzing the data management tools, the forged certificates, and the network routing that the threat hunters detail in the report, we get a very clear, objective view of how modern digital conflict is actually fought on a technical level.
Okay, let's unpack this. The report drops us right into the immediate threat in February 2026. This was orchestrated by the Iranian Advanced Persistent Threat Group known as Seedworm.
You might also see them tracked in the industry under names like Muddy Water or Static Kitten.
Right. Muddy Water. And they successfully infiltrated a deeply sensitive cross-section of targets. We're talking a U.S. bank, a U.S. airport, a Canadian nonprofit, and the Israeli operations of a major U.S.-based defense and aerospace software supplier.
And what's wild is that Seedworm has historically been mostly an intelligence gathering outfit.
Right.
But for this campaign, they entirely retooled their arsenal. The threat hunters actually found two distinct previously undocumented backdoors.
Let's talk about the first one.
Yeah, the first one is named Dindoor. They isolated this on the networks of the defense software company, the U.S. bank, and the nonprofit. And Dindoor is just a masterclass in modern stealth because it leverages Deno.
Okay, for those who might not know, what is Deno?
So Deno is a very modern, highly secure runtime environment for executing JavaScript and TypeScript. It was actually built specifically to sandbox code and fix security vulnerabilities that were found in older runtimes.
Which is just an incredible piece of irony.
It really is.
I mean, they are using an environment that is specifically designed for high security as the perfect camouflage to run malicious code. Network defenders see a secure Deno environment running and they just assume it's safe.
Exactly. But Seedworm is using it to quietly execute their backdoor.
Wow. And then there's the second backdoor, Fakeset.
Right, Fakeset.
This one is a Python-based tool found at the U.S. airport and the nonprofit. And the delivery mechanism here is what makes it so dangerous, because they didn't host Fakeset on some, shady dark web server.
No, they didn't. They hosted it on Backblaze.
Backblaze, which is a massive, highly respected commercial cloud storage provider.
Yeah, they utilized two specific Backblaze servers named GitEmpire and Elven Forest.
GitEmpire and Elven Forest.
Right. And by pulling their malicious payloads from a trusted cloud provider, the download traffic blends seamlessly into the everyday corporate noise. I mean, if a company uses Backblaze for their routine daily data backups, the security firewall looks at that Fakeset download and just flags it as normal authorized traffic.
It's a technique called domain fronting, Rob.
Exactly. And it makes finding the initial intrusion incredibly difficult for the defenders.
So the threat hunters did find them.
They did.
And they tied them definitively back to Seedworm through what is honestly a massive operational security failure involving digital certificates.
This is my favorite part of the report.
It's so good. So when developers create legitimate software, they sign it with a digital certificate to prove to your computer's operating system that the software is safe to run.
Right.
Seedworm signed the Dindoor backdoor with a forged certificate issued to the name Amy Churn.
Amy Churn, yeah.
And they used that same Amy Churn certificate on Fakeset, but they also added a second certificate issued to Donald Gay.
And that Donald Gay certificate is the digital equivalent of leaving your ID badge at the crime scene.
Seriously.
Because Western intelligence and multiple security vendors like Microsoft and Google, they have tracked that specific forged certificate for years. Seedworm used it previously to sign their older, well-known malware families like StageComp and DarkComp.
So they just completely outed themselves. And the insight here is really about how these state-sponsored hacking groups actually operate. They function like massive, siloed government bureaucracies.
That's exactly it. The department writing the shiny new Dindoor and Fakeset code is likely completely separate from the infrastructure team that procures the digital certificates.
Right. The infrastructure team probably just grabbed the Donald Gay certificate from an internal shared drive.
Completely unaware that global security researchers had already burned it years ago.
That bureaucratic laziness gave away their entire operation. It's crazy.
It really is. And once they were inside, specifically at the aerospace software company, they pivoted to a tactic known as living off the land.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, I mean, they abandoned custom malware entirely for the exfiltration phase. Instead, they utilized rclone.
Which is just a totally legitimate open source command line tool designed for managing cloud storage.
Exactly.
It's the equivalent of like a thief sneaking into a secure corporate facility with a cloned badge, but instead of bringing in their own duffel bags to steal the physical files.
Right, they just load all the classified documents into the company's own official FedEx delivery trucks.
Yes, and drive them right out the front gate. When the security team reviews the logs, they just see their authorized rclone software moving data to a Wasabi cloud storage bucket.
Which looks exactly like a routine scheduled IT backup.
Right. It is the malicious intent behind the legitimate tool that causes the damage.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, all of this quiet, methodical infiltration in February was really laying the groundwork for a massive real-world geopolitical rupture.
Yeah, the kinetic catalyst.
Exactly. The report explicitly correlates this spike in cyber activity with the February 28, 2026 coordinated U.S. and Israeli airstrikes targeting Iran.
And those physical strikes culminated in the March 1st death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Right, so the kinetic warfare triggered an immediate cyber response. While Iran launched retaliatory drone and ballistic missile strikes in the physical world throughout the Gulf region, the digital retaliation was spinning up at the exact same time.
The UK's National Cybersecurity Centre actually issued an alert right away that Iranian state actors were aggressively maintaining their network accesses to conduct retaliatory strikes.
It's a dual-front battlefield.
Yeah.
You have missiles in the air and malicious code traversing global fiber optic cables simultaneously.
And the report grounds this dual-front reality by referencing Stuxnet, which I think provides the crucial historical framework for this specific regional conflict.
Oh, absolutely. Discovered back in 2010, Stuxnet fundamentally changed global warfare.
For you listening, if you aren't familiar, Stuxnet was a computer worm deployed against the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran.
And it did not steal data.
No.
It hunted for specific industrial control systems managing uranium enrichment centrifuges. Once it infected those systems, it altered the operating frequencies, causing the physical motors to spin out of control and literally tear themselves apart.
And it did this while simultaneously feeding fake, perfectly normal diagnostic data back to the plant operator screens.
Like a digital Ocean's 11 heist.
Exactly. The operators had no idea the hardware was destroying itself until it was far too late. Stuxnet proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that you do not need a physical bomb to destroy a physical facility.
Code is a kinetic weapon.
It is.
And that underlying reality shapes everything happening in this 2026 conflict, because the report notes that the very same Natanz facility was hit by U.S. kinetic airstrikes in June 2025 and again in these recent March 2026 strikes.
The target remains the same.
The only thing that changes is whether the weapon is delivered by an F-35 or a malicious script.
Man, with stakes that high, the report maps out the specific threat actor ecosystem executing these campaigns. It is a vast network, so we can group them logically based on their tactical objectives. First, we look at the disruptors and hacktivists.
Right, and the prominent players here are Handala and Deno. Handala is an Iranian-aligned pro-Palestine group, and their technical resilience is just staggering.
What's fascinating here is how they manage their infrastructure during moments of state crisis. In mid-January, the Iranian government implemented a severe nationwide internet shutdown.
Which historically completely neutralizes domestic hacking groups because their infrastructure goes dark.
But Handala anticipated this. They bypassed the sovereign firewall entirely by leveraging the Starlink satellite network.
Yeah, they managed to acquire, configure, and operate Starlink terminals during a total communications blackout, allowing them to continue their campaigns completely uninterrupted.
And they used that uptime to run really aggressive psychological operations. They publicly claimed to have breached the mobile devices of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's chief of staff.
Right.
And they dumped what they claimed was 1.3 terabytes of sensitive oil contracts stolen from Sharjah National Oil. But their primary weapon really is panic.
Yeah, the Saudi Aramco situation.
Exactly. They blasted out claims of a massive crippling breach of Saudi Aramco, but when threat hunters actually analyzed the data dump, it was highly exaggerated.
Mostly recycled, publicly available files dressed up to look like a fresh intrusion.
Right. Now, Dynet operates on the other end of the disruptor spectrum.
Yeah, Dynet doesn't do psychological games.
Yeah.
They focus purely on brute force, unleashing massive DDoS campaigns against U.S. critical infrastructure. And they rely heavily on TCP, RST, and DNS amplification techniques.
To visualize that, TCP/RST attacks are the digital equivalent of, say, a sniper shooting the phone line right at the exact millisecond. Two massive corporate servers try to shake hands and establish a connection.
The connection violently drops before any data can ever be exchanged.
And then DNS amplification is like a malicious actor ordering 10,000 pizzas to a victim's house, but using a forged return address.
The victim's network just gets absolutely crushed under the weight of the massive unsolicited responses.
These techniques are specifically designed to rip critical services offline, causing immediate, visible, operational chaos.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
We move from the disruptors to the scouts. The report outlines a group tracked as Marsh Treader, also known as Pink Sandstorm, and they're linked to Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security.
And they are bypassing traditional network hacking entirely, right?
Yes, they are weaponizing civilian physical infrastructure. They are actively scanning the Israeli internet for specific known vulnerabilities in municipal and commercial security cameras.
Like traffic cameras.
Traffic cameras, unpatched cameras overlooking parking lots, intersections, public squares. And they do this to conduct bombing damage assessment, or BDA.
Which is wild, because in traditional warfare, you rely on military satellites to assess if your missile hit its target.
Right, but satellites have massive drawbacks. They take hours to reposition. Their orbital windows are narrow, and simple cloud cover renders them useless.
But by hijacking a vulnerable traffic camera near a military base.
Marsh Treader gives the Iranian military a high-definition, real-time feed of their missile impacts the very second they strike.
They are utilizing the terrible password hygiene of a local coffee shop's security camera to adjust the targeting telemetry for ballistic missiles.
It is a chilling fusion of civilian cyber vulnerabilities and military targeting.
It really is. And this moves us into the realm of the spies and social engineers. This is characterized by groups like Damselfly and Mantis.
Damselfly is linked directly to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and they abandon brute force for incredibly sophisticated human manipulation. They do not send generic, poorly worded phishing links.
No, they build elaborate traps. In November 2025, they impersonated Suzanne Maloney. She's a highly respected foreign policy expert at the Brookings Institution.
Right.
They registered fake webmail domains, created a detailed persona, and introduced just a tiny typo into her name. They spelled it Suzzane to bypass basic email filters.
And then they spend weeks engaging in deep, nuanced conversations with other academics and foreign policy experts before finally sending the credential harvesting link.
They really play the long game.
They do. The report also details a 2025 campaign where they targeted Israeli journalists and cyber researchers over WhatsApp, posing as administrative assistants to tech executives.
Just slowly building rapport over encrypted messaging just to steal multi-factor authentication code.
Yeah. And then there's Mantis.
Operating out of Gaza.
Right. Mantis approaches espionage from a deeply paranoid, highly technical angle. They rely on custom tooling, primarily Micropsia, which is this brutal keylogger that silently captures every keystroke and routinely snap screenshots of your desktop.
And they also deploy a modular backdoor called Gopher, built in the Go programming language. But I think their defining characteristic is their obsessive compartmentalization.
Oh, without a doubt. The threat hunters discovered instances where Mantis breached a single target and deployed 3 completely distinct, isolated versions of their malware.
Because they're anticipating failure.
Exactly. They assume the defending security team will eventually spot one of the backdoors.
And when the defenders find it, they isolate it, delete it, declare victory, and close the ticket.
And they have no idea that Mantis still has 2 entirely separate backdoors, written in different coding languages, communicating with different command servers, just quietly running in the background. It ensures relentless persistence.
Which brings us to the final, most devastating category in the ecosystem: the destroyers. The key player highlighted here is Druidfly.
Also operating under the moniker Homeland Justice.
Right. And their entire mandate revolves around deploying custom wipers.
And a wiper attack is a scorched earth protocol. There's no ransom demand, there's no quiet data exfiltration. The sole purpose of the code is the permanent catastrophic destruction of the target's data and hardware.
And Druidfly demonstrated this capability vividly in July 2022 against the government of Albania, right?
Yes, in retaliation for Albania hosting the MEK dissident group. The attack was so systemic and devastating that it forced Albania to entirely sever diplomatic ties with Iran.
And now that same group has deployed a custom wiper against Israel, which the security community has dubbed BibiWiper.
A direct reference to Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right. And BibiWiper does not just delete your spreadsheets or your family photos. It fundamentally destroys the machine's ability to function by intentionally overwriting the master boot record, the MBR, of the hard drive.
And the MBR is the foundational blueprint of the computer. It is the very first sector the hardware reads when it powers on. It literally tells the machine how to find and load its own operating system.
So by shredding the MBR, BibiWiper gives the computer complete amnesia.
Yep. If you try to reboot a machine hit by BibiWiper, you just get a black screen.
Yeah.
The hardware is functionally a brick until the entire drive is formatted and rebuilt from absolute zero.
So what does this all mean for you? We're looking at a threat landscape spanning hijacked traffic cameras, deep cover academic espionage, and code that bricks hardware. If you are listening to this, it's pretty easy to assume you are insulated because you don't run a uranium enrichment facility or a defense aerospace firm.
But the threat hunter team vehemently warns against that assumption. The blast radius is expanding dramatically into what they categorize as adjacent organizations.
Because the attackers understand supply chain vulnerability.
Exactly. If a state-aligned group wants to cripple a heavily fortified military installation, they know a direct frontal assault on the base's firewalls will probably fail.
So they target the soft underbelly. They attack the civilian logistics companies providing fuel to the base. They attack the regional water treatment facilities supplying the area.
They hit the municipal education networks and local healthcare providers. The strategy is to inflict maximum economic disruption and intense psychological pressure on the civilian population supporting the primary target.
Knowing that the blast radius includes the private sector, what does the intelligence indicate we will see next?
The report forecasts a bifurcated strategy. On the surface, you will see a massive surge in high-visibility, noisy attacks. This means aggressive website defacements and crippling DDoS traffic aimed at commercial ports, regional airports, and financial institutions.
Low sophistication attacks designed for immediate headlines and political signaling.
Right. But the real danger lies beneath that noise, where the advanced state-aligned groups will execute incredibly quiet credential attacks.
They are hunting for single points of failure. They will be relentlessly scanning for unpatched vulnerabilities in VPN appliances that secure remote workforces.
They will engage in password spraying, testing thousands of commonly used passwords against corporate logins.
And they will heavily lean into exploiting human psychology through MFA fatigue.
That is a critical vulnerability. MFA fatigue is when an attacker already has your password and they bombard your smartphone with dozens of multi-factor authentication approval requests at, say, 3:00 a.m.
Just constantly buzzing.
Yeah, they are banking on the fact that human beings get tired and frustrated. Eventually, the exhausted employee just hits approve to make their phone stop buzzing,
instantly granting the attacker full network access. The threat is highly sophisticated, but the report doesn't just map the doom and gloom. It actually delivers a concrete defense playbook. How do organizations harden their environments against this specific Iranian state-aligned apparatus right now?
It requires a layered approach. To survive the noisy, surface-level attacks, organizations must deploy robust web application firewalls, or WFs, to filter out malicious traffic before it ever hits the application layer.
And they also need enterprise-grade DDoS protection integrated deeply into their content delivery networks to absorb those massive traffic spikes without going offline.
Now, for the quiet credential attacks, it is entirely about identity management. Organizations have to immediately rip out any legacy authentication protocols that cannot enforce modern security standards.
And multi-factor authentication has to be mandatory across every single remote access point.
But as we just discussed with MFA fatigue, basic push notifications are no longer enough. The report stresses moving to conditional access policies.
What does that look like in practice?
This means the network doesn't just ask for a password and code, it analyzes the context of the login. If a user logs in from their home in Chicago, and 10 minutes later there's a login attempt using their exact credentials from a server in Tehran,
The conditional access policy recognizes the physical impossibility of that travel.
and automatically blocks the attempt, regardless of whether the password was correct.
Got it. Security teams also have to shift their focus to outbound traffic. Identifying an attacker moving laterally inside a network is incredibly difficult, but the exfiltration phase is noisy.
Defenders need to set hard alerts for unexpected data archiving. If a server suddenly starts generating massive ZIP or RRR files in the middle of the night,
Or if command line tools like rclone are executing outside of authorized backup windows.
that is the blaring red alarm that data is being staged for theft.
Finally, we have to address the destroyers. The only proven defense against a scorched earth wiper attack, whether it's historical malware like Shamoon or the modern BibiWiper, is an impenetrable backup architecture.
Because if BibiWiper successfully overwrites the MBR of every server in your data center, your primary environment is just gone.
The report mandates that organizations physically and logically isolate their backup infrastructure from their production networks. But more importantly, those backups must be immutable.
Immutability is the write once, read many concept. An immutable backup is mathematically locked at the storage level.
So once the backup is written, it cannot be altered, encrypted, or deleted by anyone.
Not a rogue employee, not a compromised administrator account, and certainly not a wiper malware for a predefined retention period. When the wiper burns your production network to the ground, an immutable backup is the only guarantee that your core data survives so you can actually rebuild the business.
The scope of what this report uncovers is staggering. We are looking at threat actors utilizing secure programming environments like Deno and cloud storage platforms like Backblaze to hide their backdoors. We have seen the weaponization of bureaucratic errors through reused forged digital certificates.
We have hacktivists smuggling Starlink terminals to bypass sovereign internet blackouts.
And intelligence agencies hijacking civilian parking lot cameras to guide ballistic missiles. And looming over all of it is the persistent threat of custom wipers designed to inflict permanent, hardware-level amnesia.
And this raises an important question, and it's a reality the threat hunters point to as we look toward the future. It brings us right back to Stuxnet.
Right.
That malware was an incredibly sophisticated, state-sponsored weapon designed to destroy physical hardware inside a highly classified, totally air-gapped nuclear facility.
It was never meant to be public knowledge.
Never. The only reason the global security community and the general public ever learned about Stuxnet was because the code accidentally escaped the confines of the Natanz facility. It leaked out and began quietly spreading across random, everyday private networks around the globe.
It was an operational error that exposed a shadow war.
Precisely. And it forces us to confront a deeply unsettling reality about the report we just analyzed. If major, highly resourced nation-state cyber operations are routinely utilizing tools like Backblaze, rclone, and Deno to hide in plain sight on critical infrastructure.
What silent, devastating cyber wars are already being waged right now.
Exactly. What incredibly sophisticated, physically destructive code is currently sitting dormant on the private networks, the financial institutions, and the municipal grids we interact with every single day.
Just waiting for the right geopolitical trigger.
Or simply waiting for the day it accidentally escapes and is finally discovered.
That is a phenomenal and somewhat terrifying perspective to leave on. A massive thank you to you, our listener, for taking this deep dive with us into the realities of the March 2026 Threat Hunter Team Report. The line between the physical world and the digital battlefield is gone, so stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep questioning the networks you trust. We will see you on the next deep dive.